Hi there and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to discuss an article I read which said that inflation in Portugal, at least in the month of November, stood at 2.5%. Now, this 2.5% statistic actually represents a decrease from the month of October, where the comparable statistic was only 2.3%. So it's actually a little bit of an uptick in the rate of inflation. However, it should be noted that according to statistics, the overall rate for 2024 is predicted to be around 2.3% in Portugal for the entire year, and this contrasts favourably with a level of 5.3% which was witnessed throughout the entirety of 2023. So the overall message is that inflation is declining, and to be honest with you, 2%, 2.5% inflation, it really doesn't sound all that bad, does it? When most people hear that, they think, well, my salary maybe went up by that much or more, and things like benefits are increasing by that much. And even in the bank, you can get deposit accounts which are in the 2 to 2.5% interest rate range. So you could think someone with savings, like maybe a pensioner or whatever, could keep up with inflation just through that. But I would dispute these statistics. It's certainly not been my experience recently in Portugal. If anything, in the last 3 to 4 months, I've noticed something of an uptick in the rate of inflation, at least for the items that I usually buy. And I'm going to focus in this video on a few normal items that I buy, food items in the supermarket basically, as well as things like electricity, just to demonstrate what I mean. So if we just start with a general one, let's talk about house prices. Now this would refer to the purchase price of properties in Portugal and also to land. It rose about 7% if we're taking the year on year from 2023 to basically October of 2024. It's a 7% rise, and you can see from the chart that 7% is actually at the lower end of how much house prices have been rising over the last decade, and it's nothing out of the ordinary. So because there's a connection between rent levels and property values, you can assume that rents have risen by a comparable amount or somewhere in the ballpark of that anyway, and that's far, far beyond 2.5%. And it's also a significant component of people's expenditure, whether they're paying a mortgage or whether they're paying rent. Housing is a massive, massive cost. Next, if we turn to energy, I remember when I first bought this house in 2023, I was with Repsol for electricity, and I was paying a remarkably low rate for a unit, a kilowatt hour of electricity. It was somewhere around the 8-cent mark at that time. Now, that had something to do with some quirks in the Iberian energy grid, spot price mechanism or whatever. I admit that, but it was still around 8 cents a unit that I was paying. And nowadays, the best you can find on the market is basically 15 to 16 cents a kilowatt hour. So essentially, it's a double. And it's not just me that has to pay that. Everybody in Portugal has experienced that. Of course, not everybody maybe had a deal as good as I was able to find in 2023, but still, energy costs have risen significantly, and it is surely by a lot more than 2.5%. I would say it's more like 25% at least for most people. If we just anecdotally think about water bills as well, I mean, these things rise every year. You get a letter in January from the water company saying that we're putting up prices by this much. Last year, the actual supply of water, it rose by about 4% in terms of the cost, but for some reason, the waste management element of it went up by over 30%. Just really, really expensive. And I'm finding that because there's a relationship between water consumption and the way that they charge the waste disposal in Portugal as well, the rubbish that you throw in bin bags is somehow related to the amount of water you use to have a shower. It doesn't really make any sense, but that's the mechanism they use. So basically my water bill is up by 20 to 25% per month on an average month compared to 2023. It's certainly not 2.5%. Moving on to talk about food and drink and stuff like that, I'll just choose some items that I commonly buy, and therefore I definitely know the price of it, because when I go to the supermarket, I am the kind of person who's just sad enough to pay attention to prices. I'm sorry, I do. It's just I remember how much things cost and how much they used to cost. And I find it disturbing when there's a big increase. So if we take milk, I buy fresh milk, which is refrigerated milk. I'm not a big fan of the UHT one, and I'll put a picture of it up on the screen. It used to be 89 cents in Pingo Dos for a litre of it, and now it's 1.19. So you can work out what that is as a price increase. It's basically up by a third. Now they do discounts. Usually the discounts take it back down to under €1 again, but still, you can't always buy milk on discount because it doesn't keep for that long. So yeah, definitely it's a significant price rise in milk. For eggs, I have actually been stunned by how much eggs have gone up. Just talking about the price earlier this year, it was €2.42 for a dozen large eggs in Pingo Dos, €2.42. And then about a month ago, it rose to €2.59. And just this week, it's up to $2.99 suddenly. So, that's a significant price rise. It's almost 25%, and it's occurred in only a few months. And Intermarché also reflects a similar kind of price rise. I've noticed that there. So, I haven't been to Continent yet, but definitely egg prices seem to be soaring for some reason this winter. Chocolate. Well, I think for this we have to go back to 2021 when I first arrived in Portugal, and I remember being able to buy a bar of Milka chocolate for €1. And that was just the standard price. You could get it basically in most supermarkets for €1. And now it's 1.79, sometimes 1.89. Usually 1.79 in Pingo Dos. Sometimes they have a discount to like 1.59, and you should feel that it's really something special. Now, this may be connected to rising chocolate prices globally, of course, but as something that people use, a lot of kids like chocolate. I like chocolate. People use chocolate for baking and desserts and stuff. It's a basic ingredient that people use for things, and the price of it is up by basically 70-80% over the last 3 years, and it's definitely not 2.5% in the last 12 months. Lastly, coffee. Now, I am not a coffee addict by any means, but I do sometimes like to have a cup of coffee in the afternoon. When I have a cake, I usually have coffee, and I prefer instant coffee. I'm sorry, I know it's like a sin or something, but I prefer instant coffee because the real coffee, like for example, that my wife will happily drink, is really, really strong, and I think I'm really a little bit sensitive to caffeine if it's quite intense, and it gives me a headache. So instant coffee I can take, I make a big mug, something like this, of coffee. I don't drink little concentrated coffee cups, it will give me a headache. So I like the instant, there we go. So I buy Delta instant coffee, the big jar of it. And coffee is one of these things that regularly has discounts in Portugal, and you should always buy it on discount because it keeps for a very long time, and you're just stupid if you pay full price. So, I'll compare the discount prices. I remember when I first came to Portugal in 2021, the discount price that I could get this jar of coffee at was €1.99. Those days are long gone. Until recently, the best discount price I could get was €3.99. But now it's gone up to $4.99 and now $5.99. That's the discount price. The actual shelf price is $8.99 or something crazy like that. So if you take it from 2021 levels, then basically this is a product which has tripled in price. And if you take it from 2023 levels, it's up by about half. So really dramatic increases in the price of coffee. And this is just instant coffee as well. It's nothing special. And it's certainly far, far, far above the level of 2.5 or 2.3% annual inflation or whatever we're told it is. There are actually only a couple of things that I usually buy that I can think of that haven't changed in price or have decreased in price. One of them would be fuel. Like if you go to fuel up in BP or Intermarché or whatever, fuel prices have come down a little bit since last year. I would say they're down roughly 10%. And I know fuel prices can be important for people, particularly for people who commute to work by car. Not really important in my life, not really. I don't fuel up that much, and the fuel that I get does tend to be free because it comes from supermarket promotions. Pingo Dos do a promotion with BP for €20 a month, and I get almost all the fuel I need, or more than all the fuel I need, just from that. But fuel prices are down maybe by about 10% from last year, so that is one thing to acknowledge. Another thing which never seems to change in price is detergent, things like laundry detergent, fabric conditioner and stuff. It's always just the same price. I haven't seen any price changes in detergents and stuff like that, not yet anyway, at least not for the brands that I buy. But overall, if we just look at this objectively and think about, the price of housing rents going up, price of electricity and water is going up, the price of a lot of basic foods are going up. I didn't even mention like vegetables and meat and fish, which have also risen, in price. And there are very few things which are stagnant to down, and a lot of things which are rising. And the rises are not 2.5% rises; they are, 10%, 20%, 50% rises. So to me, it's quite unbelievable that we can come out with a statistic that the inflation rate was only 5 point something percent from last year to this year, or it's only 2.3% this year. It just doesn't make any sense to me, because in my real experience of living here in Portugal, the actual price increase and the amount that we actually spend on things like groceries and utility bills and things like that has increased by far more than these levels. Far, far more. And I really wonder how these statistics are calculated or massaged in order to produce this result that things actually aren't that bad. Unfortunately, as we're going into a period of financial easing with the ECB cutting interest rates, that's going to put more money into the economy. And of course, we have rising levels of immigration throughout Europe, of which Portugal is part and very much shares in the situation with high levels of immigration. And I think that those two factors combined will continue to exert upward pressure on prices, and we can probably expect inflation to remain at least the levels which it has been at over the last year, if indeed the statistics are to be believed. Alright, well that'll do it for this video. Please let me know in the comments below your thoughts on inflation. Is it really abating? Is it really as low as the statistics would suggest, or do you think it's far higher? I would be genuinely interested to know your personal experience. But that'll do it for this video, and I will see you soon in the next one.